All right, so I've got this camera up on this bank. Never been here before. You can see the drop off right here. If you turn around, there's fresh elk tracks all over this dirt mound where they've been feeding on these green bushes, and it looks like there's probably gonna be a crossing going right here. So that's the view of this camera. This ought to be a cool spot. First camera down in the new zone. Here we go. Uh-oh. Come on up, puppy. She's loving it here, isn't she? Can't make it out of the woods today, damn it. But I can get out of that room. Not that it bothers me that much, it's just sometimes, right? I don't like repetitive stuff. This might be a little echoey in here, maybe. We'll see. I think the GoPro, I'm using the GoPro again. It should be pretty good audio on there, I believe. What's going on? I haven't been keeping up on top of the geopolitical world as of late because everything seems to be pretty repetitive. When I watch things, it doesn't take long to pick up the message and figure out what's going on. It's like, okay, I got it. Meanwhile, many channels just talk about the same shit every single day. It's not hard to look forward ahead of what's probably coming. So I haven't been on top for the past few days. So keeps my rants down maybe too, right? But I am definitely staying on top of hearing from the real people, the good, honest people about what's been going on for real in the real world. Now, here is some fresh out of the pen. Brief story and a question. Greetings, Steve. Thanks for all you do to bring truth to the planet. I shared my encounter with you some months ago involving a grizzly in the North Cascades National Park and one or more of our hairy friends who may have saved me from a savage bear attack in 1989. I have a friend who lived here in North Florida for a number of years that is originally from Comox, BC. We're both avid aviation enthusiasts. I was into fixed-wing airplanes and he into helicopters. My friend had made millions here in the lower 48 in the 90s and decided to bring his nephew down from BC to get him trained in choppers and set him up as a heli guide outfitter on Vancouver Island. He completed his commercial training and opened up shop with a couple of state-of-the-art Eurocopters, taking hunters and fishermen to the backcountry in season and working for the logging companies the rest of the year. I did a 3-day fishing trip with my friend and his nephew a number of years ago, and during some downtime around the campfire at night, I told my story. The nephew told me that in over the 10 years of flying around the BC woods, that it would take both hands to count the number of times he had seen a Sasquatch, and that it was fairly routine amongst the aviation community to have a sighting. Given their vantage point, I guess it makes sense. My question for you is, could you reach out to some veteran BC chopper pilots and get them to share their stories on camera? I can only imagine what tales those guys could tell. Anyway, just an idea. Thanks again for all you do. Rob Parham, Jacksonville Beach, Florida. Rob, appreciate that email, man. It's funny though, I know a handful of chopper pilots more out in the Whistler area doing heli skiing. Another friend of mine flies a Sky Crane that I grew up with. That's heli logging. Those things are freaking powerful, unbelievable power. I got to ride one of those before. Illegally, but we did it anyway. It was quite the experience, hearsay. And then we did have another guy emailed in quite some time ago and said allegedly near Toba Inlet, heli logging, they saw a hairy, huge, human-like being standing in the clear cut, and he swore if it wasn't 20 feet tall, it was 20 and a half. Wasn't there? I don't know. Don't shoot the messenger, right? But if you want me to contact some of those chopper pilots, it sounds like you've already have contact with the one we probably want to hear from. So if this guy has had that many sightings, he might want to get a hold of us and maybe forward him my information, right? But it's a bold statement he made, considering we have, I don't know how many sightings we've had emailed in here so far and how many we've cracked open. And we don't have a pattern of British Columbia chopper pilots emailing us in sightings yet. Like, I can only count one, maybe one off the top of my memory right now, right? So he's obviously our man to talk to. If you can get him to contact me, and we'll get him on for sure. Next, fresh out of the frying pan, and my phone finally synced up with my laptop, and I have a billion emails in my notes now that I saved through my Mac. This is titled, I Don't Even Know. Steve, Mike Sweeney here. I hope you don't mind me dropping a note now and then. After 33 years of law enforcement and black ops shit, now I'm retired. So I do what the F I want, which includes watching you every night until about 1 a.m. I shut off the TV and I sit in my chair just staring at the TV. Then I get up and head to bed, shaking my head all the way. Quit watching that TV, man. And I lay there thinking about all this shit until I fall asleep. Not good, not good. Moderation, right? Moderation. When I had my first experiences, I told no one. Then I told my wife. I can't hide anything from her. She knows me too well. And she accepted what I said as best she could. That lady is my saint. Good for you, man. Lottery ticket. And then I said, F it. I don't care. And I told anyone who would listen. After a long career of dealing with bottom feeders, there's nothing much anyone can say to me to rattle me. Nothing I haven't heard hundreds of times already. I just do not care. Now, I listen to these emails you read, and at times, if I'm not paying close attention, one will grab my attention right back to you. I say to myself, shit, Steve's reading my email again. What the F? Nope, not mine. Just one almost exactly the same as mine. So much so, I think I wrote it. That in itself is disconcerting, yet validating at the same time. There were several like that tonight which triggered this. Thanks for letting me do that, Mike. Hey, man, I'm glad you're still here, and I'm glad you came. You just speak openly about it. It's the only thing to do with truth, right? And you being law enforcement, you know what patterns are. I think we've had detectives email me in the past saying all they need is three similar incidents to call a pattern, then they dive on it. So yeah, I mean, all these sightings, it's just like hunting or even a fishing story, any kind of story, a sports story, how somebody scored a goal, a touchdown, a play. Eventually in those same games, there's going to be the exact same scenario play out, or damn near it. How many times, right? Same deal. Same deal. I appreciate you emailing, and try to be a little moderate on the dog shit TV, all right? Chuck it, actually. Just kick it to the curb. This next entry is titled Bigfoot Experience. Hi, Steve. I've been wanting to tell my experience for quite some time now. but ridicule is something I don't take well. Got to work on that. I've had 2 experiences with these beings that I believe are human. When I was 15, me and a good friend took a week-long trip down a river in northern Florida from Lake Talquin to Ocklawahnee State Park on the Ocklawahnee River, about 45 miles in a straight line, but more than likely 120 because of all the curves and switchbacks. We made the wrong turn 3 miles from our destination and ended up another 80 miles further south on the crooked river before finding a bridge to walk to find a phone. Oh, that sucks. That sucks. But that is another story in itself. My father, being in the Marine Corps, doing 2 tours in Vietnam, brought me up using guns to provide meat for the dinner table and spending countless weekends in the forest hunting deer, hogs, squirrels, and especially my favorite, dove. He had great faith in me at an early age, going out by myself with no worries of getting into trouble, as I was always trying to impress him and wanting to be just like he was, big in stature and self-reliant. I was fortunate to pack a 12-gauge Model 1200 pump at age 13 because he was left-handed, and upon ejecting spent shells, the empty cartridge flew in front of his right eye, throwing his aim off, so he traded me guns. Back to the point. The second night on the trip, we set up camp on a part of the river that every time I was in that area, I got the pins and needles feeling like I was being watched, just north of Bear Creek. We deer hunted that place several times and always had a dread feeling, uneasy to the point of anxiety welling up. As we was setting up the tent, opening up a few beers, that we talked my oldest brother into buying us for the trip. A case was supposed to last us a week. Yeah, right. A few joints to burn here and there, you know, teenagers. When darkness hit, he was settled in for the night and trying to see just how much pot smoke it would take to inflate the tent. Oh my God. Along about 1:30, something outside our tent knocked over our food cooler. The beer cooler was inside the tent. Then, thank goodness, or I darn sure would have come out blasting double-odd buck over our precious beer. My friend said it's hogs doing it, and I said, "Did you hear the hogs grunting and sniffing?" And that's when this scary level went through the roof of the tent. For the next 15 or so minutes, not a sound could be heard from us. Frozen stiff, holding my beloved 12-gauge Winchester, I could only think of how many buckshot and slugs I had at my disposal. My friend, also holding his 12-gauge Mossberg, sat looking at me like I was the one to do something. But I was content in hoping this camp intruder would just move on as my blood rushed through my heart. Loud enough I could swear my friend and whatever was outside could hear it. Never in my life I wanted to see daylight so bad. Time dragged by as our camp was being destroyed. Things like our Coleman lanterns hitting the ground and the food cooler being ransacked. Finally, after what seemed like hours, it was only mere minutes, all got quiet. We sat looking at each other like, what the hell was that? And my friend kept saying it was hogs. Maybe I was stoned a little, but I do know what hogs sound like. We finally emerged out of the tent to find everything strung about. Thank goodness our meat cooler was in the boat full of all our snacks. Bread, chips, crackers was missing. Our Coleman stove was thrown 30 or so feet into the brush. I was looking for telltale signs of hog hoofs and rooting, but none was there. I said to my friend, "Now do you think it was hogs?" "No," answer he replied. So, what do teenagers do? Fire up another doobie and pop the top of another beer. At daybreak, we loaded up the boat and headed downstream to our next overnight stop, Bear Creek. I know deep in my mind and heart what the intruder was, but I decided to leave well enough alone. My friend was terribly hard-headed, and I didn't want a useless argument to spoil a camping trip that had been planned and looked forward to for an entire school year. I was moved to get as much info on these beings as possible, and to this day I still search all that I can on the subject. I believe with all my heart that these beings are human, and to kill one would be downright murder. Our government needs to come clean on what they know. Yeah, that ain't gonna happen with anything. But that would change their shoved on us history teachings and open up a whole can of worms they don't want open. I watch all your videos and shun all those other so-called research channels that do nothing but use this topic to fill their pocket with money. It's a shame because the truth needs to come out, and what you're doing is heading us in the right direction. I live in northern Kentucky, as far east and north as you can go, 10 minutes from West Virginia and 15 from Ohio. And needless to say, I'll never go to that stretch of woods on the Ochlockonee River again. Steve, I'll send you another episode of my second encounter with one of these juvenile beings that happened within 30 feet of my home on the hill behind my house. And boy, do they ever stink. Thanks for hearing me out. Thanks, Steve, for hearing me out. You can use my name because I don't really care what people think of me or their opinion on the subject. They are real, and the world needs to know this and get ready for it to all come out. Thanks again. Sincerely, James Mills. James, I appreciate that email. May have been read in the past, I'm not sure, but it was in my inbox yesterday as unread. Ridicule. This is a topic where you gotta, if you're going to dive into this topic, you better have some thick skin, right? I mean, I have thick skin to a point. I mean, I can take ridicule, no problem. It's the threats and absolute aggro, like, let's get it on, that I got a tough problem with myself, or people getting attacked. I don't like it. Obvious childhood scars from having a monster in the house, right? But whatever is what it is. I mean, I had, I woke up in social media today. I posted up on my Instagram a picture of the boat and one picture of the gear, the fishing gear that I bought just to get going. And I showed everybody, everybody's like, how come fishing's so expensive? And I'm just telling you about the post. And I posted that up. And then somebody commented and said, asked me, how can you have a boat like that? You don't work, you don't have a job, you don't guide anymore, you're unemployed. I'm like, really? And I said, I think I replied with, tell me when I became unemployed again so I know that I can actually quit. But anyway, that was the threat, is what I'm getting at. That was the threat, okay? I think twice I've posted photos of this topic on my Instagram, and that's it. I don't share YouTube videos anywhere. I don't do shit to try to get people to talk about this with the general population. It's a waste of time, as I've said in the past. But anyways, what I'm getting at is, all of a sudden, right out of the blue, some doorknob with Tourette's, possibly from British Columbia, you look on his profile, he's got the fish and the deer and the moose and shit in his photos, so he's an outdoors guy. And he just commented with, YouTube Sasquatch is BS. And in a way, you just want to go, you want to start to reply. It's like, oh God. If you're that dumb, what I'm getting at is that the majority of the people who lash out or ridicule, they're not the smartest frickin' knives in the drawer, right? So you just got to shake it off. Who gives a flying shit? If you know, you know, right? If you don't know, you're probably lucky. Maybe. Until it happens, then you're not so lucky if you don't know. I'm really rambling, aren't I? All right, let me get into it here. Excuse me. My Bigfoot sighting, fall of 1976. Hi. I saw your video on YouTube. I want to tell you about my encounter with the Northwood Sasquatch in Ticonderoga, New York. Oh, I'll guarantee I'm pronouncing that one wrong. Ticonderoga. Ticonderoga, New York. This happened to me with my brother Eric, since passed on in 2018, and cousin Steve. And it was October of 76, just around 2 to 3 weeks before Halloween. Sorry to hear about your brother, man. It was a Saturday, and I decided to go out egging the neighborhood early that fall. I wonder what caused kids to do that shit. Let's go throw some eggs at shit. You know, it's kind of like shooting signs. This doesn't make sense. The encounter happened around 8 or 9 that night between Water Street and the Portage near Lake George. Been to Lake George? When we all crested Tin Pan Alley Hill before walking up on our uncle's vegetable garden at the top of the hill. We bent over to grab a few onions and carrots, but when we stood to decide to walk up Pinnacle Street, I saw something under the street light, just on the edge of the light, between the dark shadow and the glow of the light. I looked at my brother and cousin and said, "Check that out." We stood trying to figure what it was. Steve said, "Throw an egg at it, Chuck," thinking it was someone else clowning around too. We were about 150 to 200 feet away as I threw the egg. And to my disbelief, the egg hit it on the side of the face and shoulder. It started to advance toward us, walking on a slow run. We were scared, and they, Eric and Steve, ran down over Tin Pan Alley to Water Street and left me there as I tried hiding next to my uncle's gas tank next to the house. As I looked again, it was hairy, tall, 7 or 8 feet, huge shoulders, long arms, all hair, but I couldn't make out hands or face like a nose, but did see the whole head, which was all hair. The moon that night, no moon that night, just a street light, not exactly under it. I turned around and started running back down to Water Street because all of the excitement and confusion. But as I crested the hill, I wanted to take another look back to see if it was chasing me or us at the time. It crossed Pinnacle Street in front of the lady's house that we always had permission to grab pears off her tree. Excuse me. The beast, or whatever it was, started walking back up that side of the street, Pinnacle, away from the light, and shortly thereafter took off into the tall grass and cattails toward Mount Defiance. Whatever it was, it must have been 400 to 800 pounds and walking on 2 legs. All 3 of us ran back to my mom's house in Water Street, screaming and talking loud. Walked in our back door into the kitchen, still pretty shaken up and scared. We told Mom what we saw, and of course she said, "What are you guys smoking tonight?" We were about 15 years old at the time. It was a scary experience, but didn't turn me off to the woods, as I've been hunting with family since 1976 in the Adirondack Mountains of upstate New York. And the time in the 70s and 80s, I told no one, only ourselves. Who would have believed us? We're just stupid kids. Steve and I talked about it for a few summers back, and he remembers all the details and describes it. Bigfoot, the same as I. Eric, however, never wanted to talk about it. And unfortunately, he passed on before we were able to work out our differences and problem between marriages and life in general. I live in Kennebunk, Maine now, and still hunting the Adirondack Mountains. My parents still live in Ticonderoga, New York. I'm always YouTubing Bigfoot sightings and information. Other people's sketches look similar to what I saw. And I also have YouTubed the Whitehall, New York Bigfoot encounters. And thank you, Charles Tucker. All right, man. Sorry to hear about your family. And there you go. I think you're the only person I've ever heard of in the world to date that smoked a Sasquatch in the side of the head with an egg. No shit. Lucky he didn't fire back a rock and take your head off, right? That is pretty comical and terrifying at the same time. Who gets to have that, right? That badge. I smoked a Sasquatch in the side of the head with an egg. Said nobody till today. Wow. Appreciate your honesty, man. Appreciate you coming out and your time that you just donated to the people. Really appreciate it. Upstate New York. It's not a strange place for encounters. It's a common one. 2 odd experiences in Ireland and the UK. Hi, Steve. First, I'd like to say I've been following your channel for 18 months or so now, and I love your no BS style and appreciate your passion in giving people a sound-based to voice their experiences with fear of no ridicule. All right, man. Appreciate the kind words. The reason I'm writing to you is because the more I listen to your channel, the more I realize that my two experiences contain elements of what so many have experienced, which is pretty crazy, as you don't associate Ireland or the UK with these beings, right? Well, actually, we do. More and more have come forward. Before I start, both these experiences happened in 1990 Ireland and 1995 UK. Back then, I was a regular 29-year-old working class hod, carrier, and plasterer's mate who practiced Gojo Ryo karate. I was hardy, young, bolshy, and nothing scared me. I had plenty of bar/street fights, and I didn't scare easily. I think everybody in the UK and Ireland basically had to fight in a bar, didn't you? You're probably thrown in there when you're 9 years old for your first fight. Drink the beer and I'll start a fight. First experience happened in the late summer 1990 in Ireland. I was spending 3 months traveling, hiking, camping in Ireland with a girlfriend. We were driving north out of Youghal. Pronounced Youghal, spelt Y-O-U-G-H-A-L. Yeah, I wouldn't have guessed that one. County Cork. All right, we were driving north out of Youghal, County Cork, alongside the Blackwater River on a small, narrow, windy road. Good, wide, heavily forested valley, very wide river full of salmon and trout, by the way. We were some way out. We passed an abandoned church of Ireland Church on the right with a small graveyard, and the river was always to our right. No houses around, odd. But in the distance, we kept seeing a stately-looking home or castle in the distance, which kept disappearing due to the windy road. After the church, there was an unmade road to our right, which was lined by decaying tall brick walls with the river behind that. We decided to park up and go explore. It seemed weird. Nothing for miles. Just forest, the river, then this entrance and track. And as we walked along, I became very uneasy. I had the sensation of being watched. All was too quiet in the height of the summer. No noises, not even from the river, not far away. When we walked to the end of the track, there was a decaying, locked wooden gates, painted green with a large white sign painted in red, "Keep out private property." We could see what looked like a large derelict farm, decaying derelict buildings forming a courtyard with a large dead tree in its center. Then, unnerving, I noticed that most of the vegetation beyond the gate was dead or dying. That's creepier than shit. This is like right out of a horror movie. It's at this time I had a ridiculous, unexplainable sense of pure evil and being watched by something that really didn't like us or us being there. And all the hairs on my neck and body were electrified and stood on end. Panic isn't even a good enough word. The logical side of me tried to make sense of it all and to keep calm. We decided to get back to the car and to drive to our next destination. And as we walked back with the old tall brick wall flanking us, I could hear something walking behind it. I stopped to light a cigarette. It stopped. I looked back to where we'd walked, and an image literally came into my head, and I don't know how or why. It was of every leaf on every tree having an eye, an unkind eye on it, and of faces of leaves in the trees, the feeling of dread, terror, and pure evil, hatred that became overwhelming. Holy shit. So off we went, with clearly loud footsteps matching ours. We slowed, it slowed. We picked up pace, it did. And I say it as it was bipedal. No pitter-patter of hooves. This was thunk, thud, thud, regular. When the car was in sight, I told Wendy, who was walking in front of me, to run. I walked for about a dozen steps and then ran also. Freaky, unexplainable. But the second experience in England was very similar and far worse. Late summer 1995, England. I was now married. Me and my wife and two good friends, Chris and Allison, had been out for the whole day since morning exploring the South Downs. It's now a national park. We'd visited a few ancient hill forts, picked berries, walked, had a picnic. It was early evening, bright, sunny, still no breeze. We were heading home south along the A285 when we took a narrow local road through Eartham Woods. About 4 minutes after taking our turning, the road goes uphill. What? About 4 minutes after taking our turning, the road goes uphill. The old VW camper hugged along. Chris driving, Allie beside him, me and the wife in the back. Old woodland on either side of us. And then, what the F? What was that? I'm hallucinating. I rub my eyes. My wife tells me by her expression that she had seen it too. And a large, very old dead oak tree set back about 40 feet from the road, and it was shaking, as if several invisible rugby teams were jumping up and down on its every branch, or as if it was alive and it was waving its branches around wildly like a person would its arms to attract attention. I noticed that the tall, knee-length grass wasn't moving. There was no breeze. It was then when Allie went mad. "Chris, do you see that? What the F is that?" Chris was a gentle giant, 6'4", wide shoulders, always calm, ex-biker, 10 years older than me, and he was a gent, softly spoken. "Yeah, that was strange," was all he said. By this time we chugged past it, and I asked them, "What did you see?" They both told me, and it was exactly what me and my wife had seen. So we did the only thing we could, which was to park and go up to investigate, right? So me and Chris were out of the van first and rushed back to the oak tree with the girls trailing nervously behind. When we came near to the tree, me and Chris looked for signs of anything obvious. People, ropes, etc. Nothing, nobody, no ropes. Nothing explainable anyways. The girls were by now 12 feet or so in front of the tree on its roadside side. Me and Chris looking to us left and right. And I told Chris, "Keep the girls for a second." And as I walked back to the back of the tree to check something out, and again the odd feeling of foreboding came over me, an unease, a prickly feeling of being watched. And there on the floor of the forest, on top of the leaf litter, under the clearing of this large oak and behind it, where the thicker woods started away from the road, was what I'd guessed to be deer or sheep bones, along with tiny piles of bird bones, all picked clean, along with signs of a campfire that someone had tried to spread out and hide. "Keep the girls there," I said. But of course, everyone wanted to see what I'd found, and I think the color had drained from my face. Allie freaked out. I walked about another 18 feet at 90 degrees off away from the tree and road, and as in the tall grass, just before the thick undergrowth and trees where I could see the grass had been flattened. When I looked at it, it was about 6 foot by 3 foot, the size of one-man bivvy tent, perfectly rectangular, and I had noticed unseen from the road. There were empty food cans there, signs of an oddball or loner or some black magic, I thought to myself. I didn't believe in all that mumbo-jumbo back then. And it was then the same feeling I had in Ireland had hit me. But incredibly, I couldn't imagine, but worse. I couldn't move or make sense of anything. Like being in a brain fog. It was then Allie started crying, saying, "Get me out of here," and she started freaking out. Chris looked ashen and wasn't moving or saying anything. My wife, now ex-wife, was just standing there looking shaken, mouth open. Then, after what seemed like ages, but was probably only 10 or 15 seconds, we all scarpered pretty quick out of there. The girls were freaking, me and Chris trying to remain calm for their sakes. We get into the van, which will not start. It won't start after 6 or 7 attempts. By now, both girls are screaming, panicking, and freaking out, and also freaking me and Chris out. After a couple of failed attempts to start the van, we decided to put Allie into the driving seat and aim the van downhill to the way we'd come from. Me and Chris pushing the van so that we'd try to bump start it in second gear, and this worked, thankfully. Now here's where it gets really freaky. All four of us saw the same thing that was unexplainable, the tree moving wildly. All four of us felt as if we were being watched and as if we were in the presence of evil. But on the van starting, I felt something as if everything behind us was black, nothingness. And as viewed from high above, looking down on our van from high in the sky. Ridiculous? It was like the Stephen King film, The Langoliers. The Langoliers? I again, in my mind's eye, inside my head, saw a massive tidal wave of blackness, of evil, behind us and about to come crashing down upon us with total nothingness behind us. I know this sounds crazy, but when we got back to my place, we had a few drinks to calm down, and before I told anyone what I had felt as we drove home, Allie, then Chris, then my wife, all experienced or thought the same thing, of a black, evil tidal wave behind us, as if we were seeing it from above. We were all stone cold sober whilst out that day. And here's the best part. In 2002, I drove past that same place with my then 3-year-old dog with me in the car after work. So I parked up, went to see if she freaked out or if she could pick up on anything. This time I felt very calm, nothing menacing. But what did freak me out and got me running, what did freak me out and got me running out of there sheepish? The opposite side of the tree to where years ago someone had camped there, about 20 feet away, my dog, Suey, was sniffing at the ground that was leaf littered in the clearing around the oak's canopy. And lo and behold, where she was sniffing, there was a disgusting stench, really strong and foul. So I scraped the sole of my boot on the forest floor to find a graying hair fallen out, gray, jelly-like decomposing badger. I got out quick. This sounds pretty creepy, like a creepy movie, right? Sorry to rattle on, Steve, but what got me to tell you all this is for several reasons. The first being that since your channel, others like it via the internet, which now tells us all at the touch of a button, and has sparked an interest into these beings and the paranormal side of them. I discovered, amazingly, that 2 miles away from Eartham Woods, where this happened, is Slindon Woods. And thanks to YouTube, I discovered an English woman's channel. I won't share her. She's a wacko. She's the one who used the off-duty cop to terrorize a woman, and they all got arrested. She has videos on Black Panther sightings, on the UK Bigfoot, etc. And on her site, in Slindon Woods, 2 miles from where we were, on a map of odd occurrences in the UK, was a sighting of one of these beings, a UK Bigfoot sighting. What are the chances of that? Pretty insane, eh? But then again, I found all of real life is often way stranger than any fiction. Is it ever? I personally believe these beings exist, and that they have more senses than us, and that they may well possess or maintain some seventh psychic sense that we as modern humans either cannot use or have lost, or we aren't even aware that we possess. And that's my take on it. Thanks again, Steve, for all you do in giving real people who have had real experiences, some of them awful, a platform to air them in a safe environment without ridicule. God bless you in all your efforts in helping us who have experienced something that's real to us with no fear from the normal naysayers, Steve. Stay safe. Keep that head on a swivel. Always listen to your intuition. Keep fighting the good fight. John Rossiter, Chichester, Sussex, England. Yes, he gave up my name. There you go. What's up with the evil dark shit? And who is it that may be there? What am I trying to say? It's like, obviously there's more than just our physical existence in these meat vessels, right? But who gets to have that sentence of being whatever that entity is or whatever's creating that dark, evil shit feeling? Who gets to be behind that feeling? Do you know what I mean? What a sentence. Oh, it's just me, this ghouly piece of miserable hating shit hanging out behind this abandoned place, killing everything in sight and just sitting here being evil. You know what I mean? Is it kind of creepy? I mean, obviously we know of a handful of human beings that would probably end up in that position. But it's just so bizarre. When you really think about it, this planet is so frickin' beautiful. There's so many crazy, awesome things to do and see while we're alive. And meanwhile, there's this dark, dread-filled on the same planet, you know, in various places. I don't get it. I don't get it. I guess just be thankful to not be a part of that dark, evil, slimy, whatever it is, right? Crazy. We'll see if anybody else chimes in from the UK. On that the place where there was the old courtyard, dead tree, dead everything. That might be a place to fly a drone over top from a high up to show everything just dead. Maybe there's a pattern on the ground. Who knows? Really weird. Fly a drone in around there. This next entry is titled Alaska. One of my favorite states. First, I want to say, the more I see your channel, the more I see the truth and what people need to know. Thank you for this. You're welcome. It's nothing without people like you. Excuse me. You asked me for detail. Okay, there's going to be a follow-up email. At first, I was reluctant to share that with you or your audience. I have been berated and well shunned for what I'm about to relate to you. I was also told by my command, shut up. So here is all the rest I did not think I would ever relate again. No one in my family knows of this. I guess they will now. Yes, I did see it after it was done and over. How could I not? It was like a war. Better than them you. Better them than you. Adrenaline pumped up so high his face was not human, as you would consider it. Much more like that of some kind of an ape. And there it was, laying between two rocks, a kind of reddish orange ooze coming from it. Not blood, but something else. I've thought of that for years. I could see it from where I was. The others above, as I said, went insane. I was not about to go out in the open. Military training, I think. As time went on and the sounds went silent, I did go over to the body and looked. Massive. I guess 400 or bigger, heavily muscled, and a mottled, brown-black kind of fur. Bipedal, as I remember now. Feet had to be almost 3 times my shoe size, which is 10, so about 16 inches, I think. Relating this makes me uneasy again. The hands were easily the size of a basketball and clawed. Looking back up the cliff where it came down from, I found something. I gave it to Frank as he, in a roundabout way, told me to keep it. Would make it so I was always attached to them in some way. I think that has happened at any rate, as I have never been able to separate myself from that place. What I found was a fashioned kind of hafting axe. The research I have done told me this is what primitive man made thousands of years ago. I think that side of the river was part of their land. Frank told me this as much in the time I spent with them. Relating this story has somehow released me from that place and time, I hope. I hope through efforts like yours and what I had learned from the man I spoke to so long ago, that somehow in some way it had not been necessary to destroy something so unique and wonderful as I have come to know. Since that time, I have moved on from there in one way, and I feel as though if I must return to that place and find these people as I have found they are, perhaps in some way that will lead to a realization of their existence and help to avoid what happened that day. I work alone for the most part in this, as most need proof, something you really don't want to have in this case. Scared people do scare stupid things. I know, and I have felt nothing but remorse for an entire lifetime for it. End of email. Holy, I gotta search for this original email, right? Look into. This came from my inbox. It's unread from a while back. That ring a bell to anybody? I'll look into that and find that original email, and we'll get it shared tomorrow, hopefully. Wow. There's so many. All right, what do we got here? This is titled, My Experience with Full Permission to Use. All right, here we go. Dear Steve, until I started watching your channel, it never occurred to me that anyone would view their Bigfoot encounter as a negative beyond the fear in the moment. I wish to express my apology for my insensitivity. I guess that the fact that I have never personally encountered anyone who admitted to being negatively impacted, and the fact that I see my experience as a blessing clouded my perspective. I really do feel bad for anyone who has been instilled with a lingering fear or dread. It's pretty common. My name is John Robison, or at least that is a legal description of my body. I consider my real name to be Longhead. Kind of a Native American thing, although I'm not a Native American. People mistaken me for one. And I am a descendant of Powhatan and Pocahontas and have Cherokee ancestors, but that was a long time ago. Huh? Wait a minute. I consider my real name to be Longhead, kind of a Native American thing, although I'm not a Native American. And then you say I am a descendant of Powhatan and Pocahontas and have Cherokee ancestors, but that was a long time ago anyway. That's pretty confusing, opener. Let's carry on. I live in Hillsboro, Illinois. One night in the spring of 86 or 87, about 2:30 in the morning, I was fishing a small rectangular spring-fed pond, a little better than a half a mile northwest of town in an area known as Cress Hill. I was basically fishing blind with nothing more than my ultralight rod and the lure on it. No stringer, no light, no nothing. If I snagged, I was done and had to walk home. As I made my last cast and heard the lure hit the water, out of the silence from what I estimate to be 35 feet from my 4 o'clock came a long, loud scream. It cannot be imitated. And then whatever it was stomped its feet. Whomp, 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 whomp. I not only heard it, I felt the ground shake. Then silence. Deafening silence. I was frozen. Of course, I had a heightened sense of fear, but it did not overwhelm me. As I pondered what I should do, I became aware of my voice in my head repeating, "There's nothing in these woods that can hurt me. There's nothing in these woods that can hurt me." I was not saying this to myself, at least not on purpose. I was hearing it. I'm not saying it came from outside of me. I never would have considered a possibility before learning from your channel that they can put stuff in your head. All I'm saying is that I wasn't controlling it. And it went on for some time. Maybe it was saying, "Get out of here and I won't hurt you." Either way. Eventually I clicked the bail and reeled in till I felt it snug up, wiggled my way through the trees I had to get through to get to that spot, and did the world's fastest nonchalant walk back to the highway to walk back home. I reasoned that if I ran, it would chase me, and that if I moved too slow, it would chase me, so I split the difference. At the time, the thought of that being a Bigfoot never entered in at all. And it wasn't until after weeks of trying to figure out what could have done that my mind went back to footprints I'd seen in the mid-70s, not far from there, that I thought were bear tracks. What did I know? I was a kid and had never seen actual bear tracks. And I still haven't, for that matter. It's in the middle of Illinois, for crying out loud. People around here would believe you've seen a Bigfoot before they believe you've seen a bear, but I digress. They look like a baby's foot, only they were as long as mine, and I could not get anyone who would know better to come down to the woods and see the bear tracks I had found. Finally, I clicked. Those were adolescent Bigfoot tracks, and what scared me out of those woods that night was a Bigfoot. Maybe the same one, and he knew me. And I say that maybe he knew me because of so much I've learned from watching your channel. I used to camp and fish and play out in those woods at least 150 days out of the year back then, and I used to hear what sounded like 3 or 4 little girls playing out in those woods, but I could never find exactly where the sound was coming from. I just chalked it up to strange echoes. Now I think they're around me, / us quite often. I have gone back out to those places many times without fear, and that was long before I had any notion they could pick up on your thoughts. If that is so, they knew my respect for them as genuine, as has been truthfully said many times. If they wanted to hurt me, I wouldn't be here. Anyway, thanks for what you do. I looked to see if you posted anything even before I made my coffee, and if you knew me, you'd know that's high praise. Thank you, John H. Robinson. All right, man. Appreciate that. Welcome to the club. I wonder how many, well, there's going to be a lot of people that look back after hearing all the people here, and things start clicking up, right? Things start clicking. Oh, here we go. This will be of interest to many. Bigfoot in New Zealand. Many have said, nope, they're not New Zealand, but we've had people email from New Zealand. And here's another one. I've ran around the woods and the mountains in New Zealand, got dropped off in the mountains hunting with a helicopter, by a helicopter, and camped up in those mountains. Hello, Steve. I hope this email finds you well. And it does, and you too. Thank you. Firstly, I may say so. Thank you for what you're doing. For the very first time I saw one of your videos, I could tell you are no BS guy that won't tolerate fools. Because with this subject of Bigfoot, the fools are many. Life in general. I've been following the subject since my early 20s. I'm 48 now. When my brother had an encounter with something he couldn't explain. Unfortunately, my brother is no longer with us, but I still remember what he told me all those years ago very clearly. I hope the fact that this story is not my own is not a problem. If it is, you may do whatever you see fit with the information. Green light, giver. We want to hear it. Sit on the edge of our seats. Myself, 3 brothers and sister, all grew up in the South Island of New Zealand in a suburb on the outskirts of Christchurch City. I've been to Christchurch. I now live in the UK, but make it back to see my family as often as possible. It was in the 1980s, mid-1980s. My brother and a friend were riding their motorcycles through the many forest roads and tracks of the Bottle Lake Forest on the outskirts of Christchurch. This happened in an area of forest maybe 2 to 3 kilometers away from the rear of Burwood Hospital. The whole area has now been deforested and housing built. At the time, I was at home working on my car. I also lived very near the forest, maybe 3 to 4 kilometers as the crow flies. I heard the familiar sound of his approaching trail bike in the distance and tidied myself up to meet him. He powered up my driveway and practically dumped his bike on its side, then walked straight to me and tossed his helmet. He was obviously excited about something. All he could get out of his mouth were a bunch of bad words. Oh shit, oh F. His eyes were huge. Eventually he calmed down and said something like, "You're not going to believe what I just saw." A minute or so later, I managed to get what happened out of him. Himself and his friend were riding the usual tracks they'd ridden many times before, enjoying the day as they usually do. They rounded a corner, and there was something in the middle of the logging road, 20 to 30 meters ahead. Immediately he stopped, and the thing turned and stood to face them. It seemed as startled as he was to see them. After literally moments, the thing took off into the trees. He was surprised at how fast it could move. He said it was so fast that the only time it slowed was when it jumped a log on the roadside, then it was gone. I quizzed him on his appearance, and he said it stood like a man and was covered in dark hair. It either had a very large calf muscles or the hair was very long in that area. The color was black splash brown, and it was very tall, about 7 feet. The face was not flat, but almost had a snout, The eyes are very dark, practically all black, and he said the eyes are what stuck with him as they looked right at him. I said to him, "Let's go back." And he instantly replied, "No effing way." He was scared. Very, very unusual for him, as he was also a no BS type of guy. Over the next month or so, I tried to convince him to go back, but he just wouldn't. We both grew up playing around in that forest, and I never saw or felt anything there. After a few years later, a family, a very, very prominent in the church, said they saw something. I managed to ask one of them what they'd seen, and he just said something huge and hairy stepped through some bushes toward them. They turned tail and ran before seeing much else. I also asked my brother's friend that was with him what he saw, and he just really didn't want to talk about it. He just shrugged and said he didn't know what the F that was. What's up, pups? Hold on a minute. Okay, so that's his story. I'm pretty sure I've included everything he told me. I did go to the spot a few times myself, but never saw / heard / felt anything unusual. Since discovering your videos, it has rekindled my interest in what it was that my brother saw. I've discovered that these things also exist in the Maori native New Zealand people legends, and they call it Mohau. Moehau. They also have Yowie in Australia. I see mostly the sightings that you cover are in the majority of America and Canada. I thought it may interest you to know that they are being seen deep in the southern hemisphere in New Zealand as well. You've alluded to the fact in a couple of your videos that you know that they are. Can you tell me because I'd love to know? Oh, I know what they are? Can you tell me because I'd love to know? I've been wondering half of my life what the hell they could be. Hopefully some of this info may be of use to you or anyone else should you decide to read this on one of your videos, which may I add are visually stunning. I shall continue to follow you. Okay, so that's it from me. Thank you for taking the time to read this email. The story is not as thrilling as others you've read, but hopefully it will be of use to someone. Take care and all the best. Bill Dunbar. Bill, appreciate your email, my man. And yeah, we had a law enforcement officer email us from the South Island, and he seen one. I think they had it banging on the wall of the hunting camp, maybe, hunting shack. Station, they're called stations there, right? Yeah, there's been a handful of people email from there. It's funny how many people, we'll get a lot of people saying, they're not in New Zealand. They are other places, but they're not in New Zealand. we get a lot of people from the UK saying that too. They're not in the UK. Don't be silly. They're everywhere. What are they? I can't boldly dictate to the world right now what they are. I'm forming a pretty frickin' good idea in my mind of what they potentially are and aren't, and as well how they came about. But I think more importantly right now, I am looking into this truth, but I'm really working hard at trying to figure out our truth is where this has led me. It's just where it goes, right? And like I said in the past, I do not believe we will be able to uncover all of the truths of these beings until we uncover our absolute truth, right? So there's part of my answer. And one day I will say what I firmly believe. One day. What do you think? One more? See how long this is first. Well, not too long. My experience is the title of this email. Sir, thank you for providing a platform for me and others to tell our experiences. You're welcome. Too easy. I've been in the woods my whole life, and it started at 7 years old when me and my father would camp in the middle of nowhere, just us and nature. In 1990, I was at Boy Scout camp working on my 50-miler badge, but was doing 2 of them back to back. I was 14 years old. The boys with hunting licenses were able to bring shotguns to hunt and live off the land for a few days. At night, we would put in a blank, 1 round of buckshot and 2 rounds of slugs to defend any bears that were extremely aggressive. On the 3rd night, we stopped in a section of pines about 20 yards from a small lake. And during the night, I woke up to use the latrine. After I sat down on a stump just to take in all the stars by the lake. And one of the adult leaders didn't hear me come back and came out to find me sitting there staring up. After about 30 minutes of stargazing, I heard what I want to call a stomping sound of about, in my young age, 40 yards or so. The adult leader and I looked closely, and in the moonlight, could see a man standing about 10 feet tall along the shoreline. We didn't move and were silent. It walked towards the campsite, and in the light it turned towards us, came within 10 yards, and looked at us. I felt scared as any teen seeing this would feel. I looked at its eyes, and I could see the moon in its corners. It was there about a minute and walked away. Fast forward 20 years, my friends from scouting and I made it a point to go camping 2 to 3 times a year. We picked a spot 20 or 30 miles from the beaten path. The first night, we'd have a small fire and chat about our year and future camping/hunting trip. At about midnight, I woke up from a dream. In many years as a firefighter/EMT, which has given me a sixth sense when danger, being watched, or something in the future will happen in hauntings, it's hard to explain. But after waking up, I got out of the tent, sat down by the now emberous fire, getting its last warmth from the chilly night. Another friend heard me and came out and sat with me. And he asked if I was okay, and I didn't answer. All I could do was hold my finger to my mouth in order for him to be quiet. And in the distance, I could hear heavy footsteps moving off to my right about 30-ish yards away. It would walk about 10 steps and stop behind a tree and move again. Since most of us carried pistols either under our shoulders or on our hips, I slowly pulled mine out onto my lap. I was really nervous, remembering the fear I had when I was a teen. I watched it in the shadows of the little moonlight we had. After a minute or two, it grunted and walked away. I think my friend didn't believe what he saw, but we never talked about it to our other friends. Again, weird again to me. Fast forward again to 3 years ago, my same group of friends were camping deep in the mountains about 30 or so miles from the road. We snowshoed in with all our supplies on toboggans, and we settled down for a 15-day stay. The 8th night, after a fun day of ice fishing for dinner, we all settled down for the night. Each of us would get up for an hour and watch the fire. It was minus 24 that night, so we kept 2 coffee pots next to the fire for hot cocoa if we got cold. And as I was sleeping, I woke up like something was going to happen. I got in only my sweatpants and sweatshirt and boots, sat down next to a friend and poured a cup of cocoa, hoping me being startled from a sound sleep was just a bad dream. And sitting next to the fire, I saw motion about 20 yards away behind my buddy who was watching the fire. I whispered to him to not move and be silent. I wasn't scared, but my senses were heightened. My awareness of my surroundings was like a radar system. Long story about that. My other friends woke up and sat by the fire. Both of us told them to be quiet, don't move. Once they saw the dark silhouette of the man, they all gasped. Eyes were locked on from the ones who could see him. He stood there for maybe 2 minutes and walked around the camp and then grunted and walked away. And here comes the weird part. Later that morning, we walked to where we knew we saw him, and there were no footprints, nothing. Just our snow-covered snowshoe tracks from where we came in. I've seen them many times while camping alone, hunting miles away from people in the mountains. And if I had to guess, about 20, 25 times. Even when I harvested a deer and tracked it a mile. It was so far away from everyone. I camped where I was and radioed, I'll meet you at the road in the morning. The night the yotes were singing and probably and probing where I was, and then silence. And I said, hello, I'm just here for the night. And they walked away. But I did harvest 10 coyotes that night. Again, thanks again for giving us a place to tell our experiences. Good luck hunting and fishing. Rest in peace, Mr. Macaroni. B. There you go. What's up with the no tracks, you guys? What's up with the nothing there? What's up with the dozens of witnesses hearing clearly? Snow, mud, no tracks, nothing there. He was breathing on the side of the tent, got up a flashlight, nothing there. Then all of a sudden there's something there. Then there isn't something there. What's that telling you? What's that telling you? What's that doing for your puzzle piece? Or is that the points that you ignore? Right? Like so many in the past. Oop, we want to hear your encounter. Oh, wait a minute. Sounds kind of supernatural-ish. Okay, we don't want to hear it. Only said dummies. But anyway. Okay, Adventure Dog. Funny how dogs get frustrated, right? When they just want you. They want you to do something with them. Look at them, pet them, take them somewhere. My little piece of Velcro. Doggy Velcro. Share my story at howtohunt.com, all right? Get your truth shared. Everything slowly comes together as long as you keep at it and keep talking, right? It comes together. Lots is coming together for many of us. But there's still lots of new people just showing up. Anyway. Here we go. On with another day. I'm really tempted to maybe escape for a day and a half and go to the coastal mountains to get some trail cameras of mine and lay out some more. I'm real tempted. If I do, I'll take you guys with me. And it's, of course, where I had a lot of odd stuff go on. Anyway, there you go. Hopefully, I'll be back tomorrow.